This video is for educational purposes only. Always consult your doctor before making any health decisions. If you are in your 50s or 60s and you have a bag of cashews or a jar of peanut butter sitting in your kitchen right now, thinking it's a smart keto snack, I need you to keep watching before you reach for another handful. Because out of the 15 most popular nuts in the world, at least 3 of them are basically candy in disguise, and several of the ones that look keto approved are quietly feeding a kind of inflammation that gets a lot more dangerous after 50 than it ever was at 30. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which nuts deserve a permanent place in your kitchen, which ones need to be portioned with real care, and which one nut in particular does more for your joints, your arteries, and your blood sugar than almost anything else sitting on a grocery store shelf. Here's how we're ranking them. 4 numbers every time. Net carbs, because that's what knocks you out of ketosis. Total fat, because that's the fuel keto runs on. Omega-6 fatty acid content. And the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. That last one is the part almost nobody explains properly, and it's the part that matters most for anyone past 50. So let's talk about it before we start the countdown. Omega-6 and omega-3 are both essential fats. Your body can't make either one, so you have to eat them. The problem isn't that omega-6 is bad. The problem is proportion. Omega-6 fats feed pro-inflammatory pathways in your body. Omega-3 fats feed anti-inflammatory pathways. When you were younger, your body could absorb a lopsided ratio and shrug it off. After 50, that margin shrinks. Your arteries are naturally stiffer than they were at 35, which means your heart already works harder to push blood through them. Add a steady diet that's loaded with omega-6 and almost no omega-3, and you're pouring fuel on a fire that's already burning a little hotter than it used to. Researchers estimate that a healthy ratio sits somewhere between 1:1 and 4:1, omega-6 to omega-3. The standard modern diet, full of seed oils, fried food, and grain-fed meat, often runs 15:1 or higher. That gap is one of the quiet drivers behind the joint stiffness, the puffiness, and the "I just feel inflamed" sensation that so many people in their 50s and 60s describe to their doctor and get told is just aging. It usually isn't just aging, it's often diet. So as we go through this list, I'm not just going to tell you the carbs, I'm going to tell you what each nut is doing to that ratio, because that's the piece that decides whether a nut is helping your body at this stage of life or working against it. A quick honest note before we start: botanically, several of these aren't technically nuts. Some are drupes, some are legumes, one is even a seed from a gymnosperm. We're using the word the way everybody actually talks, so let's get into it. Number 15, the betel nut. Surprisingly, this is one of the most consumed nuts on Earth, chewed as a mild stimulant across parts of Asia. For keto purposes, it's a disaster: 61% net carbs and almost no fat. It's structurally closer to bread than to a fat source. Skip it entirely. Number 14, the chestnut. A holiday favorite that almost nobody outside a Christmas song actually eats regularly. And for keto, that's probably for the best. 48% net carbs, very low fat. This is a starchy vegetable wearing a nut costume. Number 13, the cola nut. This is the bitter, caffeine-rich nut that gave the original cola drinks their name and their kick. 21% net carbs and very little fat, not something built for a fat-burning metabolism. Number 12, cashews. This is the first real heartbreaker on the list because cashews are genuinely one of the most loved nuts on the planet. Creamy, slightly sweet, endlessly snackable, but they're also nearly 29% net carbs. That's almost a third pure starch. If you're in your 50s and your fasting blood sugar or your A1C has been creeping up, which is common because insulin sensitivity naturally declines with age, cashews are one of the easiest healthy snack traps to fall into. Number 11, pistachios. Same heartbreak, different nut. 17% net carbs. They taste like a treat because, carbohydrate-wise, they basically are one. Number 10, hickory nuts. Now we cross into genuinely keto-friendly territory. 12% net carbs, 64% fat. The catch is the omega-6 load, which runs high, so this is a yes but portionate nut, not an eat-freely nut. Number 9, pine nuts. 9% net carbs, 68% fat. Good macros, but again, a fairly high omega-6 content, so they're best used the way Italian cooking actually uses them, as a flavor accent, not a snack you eat by the handful. Number 8, almonds. The nut everyone asks me about. 9% net carbs, 50% fat, and a moderate omega-6 load. Solid, dependable, but not a top performer. More of a reliable middle-of-the-roster player than a star. Number 7, hazelnuts, also called filberts. 7% net carbs, 61% fat, but a notably high omega-6 content. Delicious, especially roasted, but again, this is a nut to enjoy in a measured portion, not a free-for-all. Number 6, Brazil nuts. 5% net carbs, 66% fat, on paper. One of the best-looking nuts on this list. But here's something I want every viewer over 50 to actually hear. Brazil nuts are extraordinarily high in selenium, often delivering an entire day's recommended intake, sometimes several days' worth, in just a handful. Selenium is processed through your kidneys, and kidney filtering capacity naturally declines with age. By your mid-60s, many people have lost a quarter or more of their original kidney function without a single symptom. That means the margin for too much of a good thing gets smaller as you get older. I had a patient, a retired accountant in her early 60s, who started eating a small bag of Brazil nuts almost daily because she'd read they were good for thyroid health. Within a couple of months, she developed brittle nails, hair thinning, and a metallic taste in her mouth, classic, if often missed, signs of selenium buildup. Once she cut back to 2 or 3 Brazil nuts a day, the symptoms resolved within weeks. The lesson isn't avoid Brazil nuts, it's treat them like a seasoning, not a snack. Number 5, peanuts. Technically a legume, not a true nut, but everyone eats them like one, so they're on the list. 6% net carbs, 50% fat, genuinely solid keto macros. The catch is the omega-6 content, which is high, and peanuts carry essentially 0 omega-3 to balance it out. They're also one of the more common food intolerances I see in clinic, alongside Brazil nuts, often under-recognized because the symptoms show up as bloating or joint achiness rather than a dramatic reaction. Number 4, coconut, specifically dried, unsweetened coconut. 7% net carbs, 65% fat, and here's the beautiful part. It's nearly impossible to eat enough coconut to meaningfully raise your omega-6 intake. Most of its fat is saturated, and a large portion is medium-chain triglycerides, the same fats MCT oil is made from, which your body can convert into usable energy with minimal metabolic effort. For anyone over 50 whose metabolism has slowed and whose insulin sensitivity isn't what it used to be, that's a genuinely useful property. Toss it into a smoothie, bake it into a low-carb macaroon, use it shredded over a yogurt bowl. Number 3, pecans. Only 4% net carbs and a remarkable 72% fat. That's why they taste so rich. The drawback is a fairly high omega-6 load with no omega-3 to offset it. So if pecans are your go-to snack every single day, you can drift toward that inflammatory 15-to-1 or 20-to-1 ratio without realizing it. Number 2, walnuts. 3% net carbs, 59% fat, and here's why walnuts earn the silver medal, Sess. They're the only nut on this entire list with a meaningful amount of omega-3, making up roughly 9% of their fat content. That means even though their total omega-6 number isn't the lowest, their ratio is by far the most balanced of any nut here. You can eat a genuinely generous portion of walnuts and stay close to that healthy 4-to-1 range. I think of walnuts as the self-correcting nut. They bring their own counterbalance. This is also where I want to share a second story. I had a patient, a retired school teacher in her late 50s, who'd been told her morning joint stiffness was just getting older. She walked daily, ate what she believed was a clean diet, but her snacking pattern was almost entirely peanuts and pecans, both high omega-6, 0 omega-3. We swapped her daily snack to a walnut and macadamia mix and added a couple of servings of fatty fish per week. Within about 6 weeks, she described her morning stiffness as maybe 20% of what it used to be. Nothing else in her routine changed. That's the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio doing exactly what the research says it should. And now, number 1, the macadamia nut. 6% net carbs and an extraordinary 76% fat, the highest fat percentage of any nut on this list. But the real reason it sits at the top isn't the fat number. It's that out of all that fat, only about 1.3 grams per 100 grams is omega-6. You could eat a genuinely large serving of macadamias, close to 800 calories worth, and still only take in around 1 gram of omega-6. That makes the ratio almost trivially easy to balance with a little fish or fish oil. Low carb, extremely high fat, and the lowest inflammatory load of any nut we've covered. If you're over 50 and trying to reduce joint inflammation while staying in ketosis, this is the single best nut you can reach for. Now, a few honest myth corrections because I see these mistakes constantly. First, nut butter math. I've seen other channels claim almond butter is dramatically better than peanut butter because it has fewer carbs. That's misleading. A pure, ingredient-free almond butter has exactly the same numbers as whole almonds, 9 grams of net carbs per 100 grams. Pure peanut butter has the same numbers as whole peanuts, 6 grams. By the raw numbers, peanut butter actually edges out almond butter on carbs. The reason commercial peanut butter often tests worse is added sugar and hydrogenated oil, not the peanut itself. Always check the label. The ingredient list should say nothing but the nut, maybe salt. Second mistake, assuming keto-friendly means unlimited. Hickory nuts, pine nuts, almonds, and hazelnuts are good choices, but they're a measured handful nuts. Not eat from the bag while watching television nuts, because their omega-6 content adds up fast even while your carbs stay technically fine. Third mistake, buying nuts roasted in seed oils like soybean or sunflower oil, which are themselves extremely omega-6 heavy. You can do everything right on nut selection and undo it by the cooking oil. Raw or dry roasted is what you want to look for on the label. So here's the practical strategy, especially if you're past 50 and trying to lower inflammation while you stay in ketosis. Fix 1. Build what I call your core 4. Macadamias, walnuts, coconut, and pecans in moderation as your everyday rotation. Fix 2. Treat cashews and pistachios as an occasional, carefully portioned treat, not a daily snack because of the carb load. Fix 3. If you do eat peanuts, pecans, hickory nuts, pine nuts, or hazelnuts regularly, actively counterbalance them. 2 servings of fatty fish per week or daily fish oil goes a long way toward correcting that ratio. Fix 4. Cap Brazil nuts at 2 to 3 a day, not a handful, given how kidney filtration naturally slows with age. Fix 5. Always check labels on nut butters for added sugar or oils. A clean ingredient list should be short. Fix 6. Weigh or measure your portions rather than eyeballing a handful, because a handful at 62 can be a very different number of grams than a handful at 30. Here's what to remember. 1. After 50, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio matters as much as the carb count because your body's inflammatory baseline is already higher. 2. Cashews and pistachios are the 2 biggest carb traps on this list. Full stop. 3. Brazil nuts and peanuts are nutritionally strong but are also the 2 most common nut intolerances I see in practice, so introduce them carefully. 4. Coconut and macadamia are essentially free pass fats for omega-6 concerns. 5. Walnuts are the only nut that brings its own omega-3 balance, making them uniquely forgiving in larger portions. 6. Pure nut butter has identical numbers to the whole nut. Added ingredients are what change the math. 7. If you've been told your joint stiffness or puffiness is just aging, it may be worth looking at your fat ratio before accepting that answer. 8. Start tomorrow by simply swapping 1 daily handful of cashews or peanuts for macadamias or walnuts, and notice how you feel in 3 to 4 weeks. If this helped you rethink what's actually in your pantry, share it with someone over 50 who's been snacking on cashews thinking it's a good keto choice. They need to see this list too. And before you go, tell me in the comments, A, if macadamias are already your favorite and this just confirmed it. B, if you're switching your daily snack to walnuts starting today. Or C, if this just convinced you to finally clean out that bag of cashews. I'll see you in the next one.